What does $70 million look like? I want you to truly picture it. Stacks of cash so high, they block out the sun. A life of absolute freedom, where money is no longer an object. Now, what does it look like when it all turns to dust? How does a man standing on top of the world, earning over $30 million a year, end up completely and utterly bankrupt? This isn't a riddle. This is the real, documented, and tragic financial autopsy of a global icon, MC Hammer. And the shocking truth is, the hidden psychological traps that destroyed his empire are the same traps that silently sabotage the finances of millions of people every single day, maybe even yours. Tonight, we are not just telling the story of a celebrity going broke. We are uncovering the powerful psychological forces, loyalty, image, and ego that orchestrated one of the most spectacular financial collapses in entertainment history. Our story begins in the late 1980s. Stanley Burrell, a charismatic kid from a poor neighborhood in Oakland, California, who once dreamed of being a professional baseball player, decides to try his hand at music. He borrows money from two of the Oakland A's star players, and with that seed money, he creates his own record label. He records his music, sells records from the trunk of his car, and hustles with a relentless energy. This is the underdog story, the pure, unadulterated hunger for success. In 1990, that hunger explodes into a global supernova. His album, Please Hammer, Don't Hurt 'Em, sells more than 18 million copies, becoming the first rap album to ever be certified diamond. The lead single, You Can't Touch This, is not just a song, it's a planetary anthem. Stanley Burrell is gone. In his place stands MC Hammer, one of the most famous and wealthiest entertainers on Earth. At his peak, he's earning an estimated $30 million per year. Now, we have to understand the psychology of the man at this moment. Hammer didn't just come from a humble background, he came from a deeply religious and community-oriented one. So when the tsunami of cash arrived, his first instinct was not just to enrich himself, but to uplift everyone he had ever known. And this is where the first and most devastating financial leak begins. He didn't just hire a manager and an accountant, he hired his entire neighborhood. His entourage ballooned to a staggering 200 people. He was paying salaries to friends, family members, old acquaintances. His monthly payroll alone was over $500,000. This wasn't a business decision, it was an emotional one. It's a powerful psychological trap for those who experience sudden wealth, the savior complex. You feel a profound sense of guilt and obligation to the people you left behind. You want to prove that you haven't forgotten where you came from. So you hire, you gift, you spend. Each salary you pay, each car you buy for a cousin is a validation of your success and a repayment of a perceived social debt. But what starts as a noble gesture quickly becomes a crippling financial burden, an anchor of loyalty that is slowly, silently pulling your ship underwater. Then came the second psychological force, the pressure of image. MC Hammer wasn't just a musician, he was a brand built on spectacular, over-the-top showmanship. His image was one of untouchable wealth and success, and he felt a desperate need to make his life look as spectacular as his music videos. This is a classic psychological phenomenon known as lifestyle inflation, but Hammer took it to a world record level. He bought a 12-acre property in the hills of Fremont, California for $12 million. But he didn't just buy a mansion, he built one, a sprawling, custom-built palace with a bowling alley, 2 swimming pools, a 17-car garage, and a baseball diamond. The floors were Italian marble, the gates were solid gold, and there was even a recording studio where he had a gold-plated mixing board. The total cost ballooned to over $30 million.
This house wasn't just a home, it was a statement. It was a physical manifestation of his catchphrase, "You can't touch this." It was a fortress of ego designed to prove to the world, and perhaps to himself, that the poor kid from Oakland had truly made it. The spending didn't stop there. He bought a stable of 19 thoroughbred racehorses. He bought 2 private jets. He bought a helicopter. He bought a fleet of luxury cars, including a Lamborghini. His monthly expenses were astronomical. The mansion alone cost a fortune just to maintain. The staff, the jets, the horses, it was a relentless, roaring bonfire of cash. The money was pouring out as fast as it was pouring in, if not faster. This is the hedonic treadmill on steroids. The initial thrill of buying a mansion fades, so you need to buy a jet. The thrill of the jet fades, so you need to buy a racehorse. You are constantly chasing a bigger and bigger high, and your baseline for what feels normal becomes dangerously inflated. This is how a man making tens of millions of dollars a year can feel like he is constantly on the verge of not having enough. The psychological need to maintain the larger-than-life image he had created became a monster that had to be fed every single day. The third psychological flaw was perhaps the most fatal, a complete and total misunderstanding of wealth versus income. MC Hammer had a massive income, an almost unimaginable river of cash flowing in, but he had very little true wealth. Wealth is not what you earn, it's what you keep. It's what you invest in assets that grow over time. Hammer, by his own admission, never had a professional, independent financial advisor who could have guided him. His financial team consisted of people he knew, people who were on his massive payroll, who had a vested interest in keeping the party going. He wasn't investing his money in stocks, bonds, or real estate that would generate passive income. He was spending it on liabilities, things that cost money to maintain. A mansion is not an asset if it costs you $1 million a year in upkeep. A private jet is not an asset. It's a cash incinerating machine. He was treating his income like it was an infinite resource, a magical spring that would never dry up. This is a common psychological blind spot known as optimism bias. He believed that his success would last forever, that he would continue to produce multi-platinum albums and earn $30 million a year indefinitely. He couldn't imagine a future when the music stopped. But the music always stops. By the mid-1990s, the cultural landscape had changed. Grunge and gangster rap had taken over. The fun, high-energy pop rap of MC Hammer was suddenly seen as outdated, a relic of a bygone era. His next albums were commercial failures. The river of cash didn't just slow down, it almost dried up overnight. And this is the moment of the crash. It's the moment the high-speed car hits a brick wall. He still had the expenses of an emperor, the mortgage on the $30 million mansion, the payroll for the 200-person staff, the upkeep on the jets and horses. But he now had the income of a mortal man. The numbers no longer made sense. The math was brutal and unforgiving. The debt piled up with breathtaking speed. He was borrowing money just to maintain the lifestyle he had built. He was trapped. He had created an image of untouchable success, and he was psychologically incapable of dismantling it. Admitting he couldn't afford the mansion or the entourage would have been admitting failure. And for a man whose identity was completely tied to his success, that was an impossible pill to swallow. So he held on, sinking deeper and deeper into a financial black hole. Finally, in 1996, just 6 years after the release of his biggest hit, MC Hammer declared bankruptcy, claiming $13 million in debt. The dream was over. The jets were sold, the horses were sold, the staff was fired, and the magnificent mansion, the fortress of his ego, was sold for a fraction of what he had poured into it. The story of MC Hammer is one of the most important case studies in the psychology of money. It is a powerful lesson that a high income does not protect you from financial ruin. It teaches us that loyalty, while a noble virtue, can become a devastating liability if not balanced with sound financial judgment. It proves that the image you project to the world can become a prison that you are forced to pay for long after the success has faded. Most importantly, it's a brutal reminder that financial literacy is not an optional skill. It is the essential foundation upon which all sustainable success is built. Without understanding the difference between an asset and a liability, between income and wealth, you are simply